Okay, the webinar is live and we're starting everything. Dawn, can you hear us now by any chance? No. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with Dawn. We may not be able to have him here tonight. I don't know. Let me just text him one more time and see. No. Okay. I'm just going to tell him he may have to give up here. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong. I'm not seeing any controls on my side that limit him. Marcus, you're co-host too, so do you see anything there that is cutting Dawn out by any chance?
I'm looking.
I don't have my.
He has no audio on his computer. There's no even audio logo. You're like, you can't mute him.
Yeah, I know, but he had it. He was here. He did it last time the exact same way. So I'm not sure why. He's using his iPad. Just give me one more minute and then we'll start regardless. Okay, I gave him a couple other suggestions, but I'm just gonna get started if you're okay with that, because finance potentially could be long depending on how much you want to talk about the budget. So I gave him a couple other options, like I said. Planning and zoning is the first committee. So Mr. Burley, we're okay to go?
Yes, please.
Okay, I have 4 items and they're fairly brief. First, outstanding items. Just so you know, I did add the sidewalk inspection issue to outstanding items because I know that's not completely resolved. And we've talked about that a few times in this committee. So I wanted to let you know that I'm going to keep it on there just until you folks are ready to move forward with it. Probably at this point of time in the year anyway, it won't make much difference to doing sidewalk inspections because of the weather coming up. But I wanted to keep it live, so I have it under my outstanding items. If there's no questions about that, I want to go to 2 notes.
Yes, Patty.
No, I just note that we will be having a consultant working on an active transportation plan, which will include a comprehensive review of the sidewalks. So that can be something that will go into that action.
Right, that's another reason to hold off on doing anything with it. Item B, Environmental Advisory Council, just so you are aware, in case you didn't see it, I did send their report to you by email a week or so ago. So I wanted to make sure you have it to review. If you want to put it on and discuss it, let me know, but I don't know if everyone's reviewed it yet. Otherwise, I will just assume you're going to review it and there won't be anything else done with it other than your review. Item C, as a reminder, Churchill forwarded a document to me, which I sent to you regarding possible disposition of the Westinghouse property and zoning changes there. I'm not sure if there's anything that you need to do there, but I know they wanted to let you know what they're looking at. So I did send that to you. That was probably, again, about a week or so ago. And the last item I have, capital improvements plan for 2021. There is only one item that this committee ever deals with the capital plan, and that's the comprehensive plan update. We've kept this in here traditionally, not so much because it's a capital item, because it's an item that can cost a good bit of money every year, and we want to keep it in front of council. So that's the reason why it's always been in the capital plan. And what this committee is supposed to do is essentially just review that one item and recommend, if you want, that it go to Finance Committee for consideration as part of the full plan for 2021. Any comments from the committee?
Well, I'd like to keep the plan going because we've been working on this so long now, and I think it needs to be completed. Patty has put together such a wonderful presentation. I really like to see it continue on.
Okay,
Well, the comp plan is finished, but we are working on the implementation components. And one of those is the climate action plan, and you should be getting a draft of that at the end of November after the Environment Advisory Council reviews and comments on the draft. We're hoping to get a draft to them in the next couple weeks. We're having one more go at the business community because we only got 6 responses to the last round of information requests. So hopefully we'll be able to get a few more back by sending them the actual survey. And then we'll put in the proposals. After the advisory council sees it, they'll probably bring it to you in either the November meeting or in December.
Sounds great. Any other comments about it?
then if there's no comments, I will just forward it to Finance for their implementation, or for their placement of it in the final plan. So it'll go to Finance in November.
Sounds
I
great.
don't have any, I'm sorry.
That sounds great.
Okay, I don't have any other items from my update for this committee. It looks like Dawn may be active again.
Don, are you in on this, Don?
You're muted though, Dawn. You have to unmute
Don, you gotta
yourself.
unmute yourself.
I don't think I can do that. I think you have to do it.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, okay, good, good. Yes, I can hear you now. Wonderful.
Okay. Is it too late?
Nope, you're on.
Sorry about that.
We waited just for you.
You're a great guy. First thing is, last month I talked about the dangerous tree down at the corner of Lenox and Atlantic Avenue. I sent the folks a letter telling them that the tree had to come down, and I'm happy to report the tree is gone and there's no more problems. So that's pretty good condition there. So everybody's back to normal again.
Good.
Yesterday, Joe Wisniewski, our arborist from Carl's Tree Service, and I spent 3.5 hours going through the borough, marking down trees that had to be pruned. And it turns out that we're within a few trees of what we had last year. There's some serious ones down on Atlantic Avenue that just look like a tunnel. They're actually closing off the street, really. But other than that, I have to figure out how many removals we're going to have, but I didn't get to that point yet. So hopefully soon I can get to there. The other thing that yesterday I received 2 phone calls almost back to back about fire pits in the borough. If they're allowed because of the COVID, they want to have some type of entertainment, I guess, outside during the winter. So I pulled up the ordinance, which is chapter 7, section 201. And it says there that no person shall burn or cause to be burned any paper, boxes, rubbish, leaves, wood, or any other material or substances within the Forest Hills Borough. So I called Steve Corbel and talked to him about it, and he said that I should be bringing it up tonight at the meeting. I kind of think that the ordinance has to be revised a little bit because it doesn't say anything in there about recreational fire pits. So I told the.
Can I make a comment, please?
Pardon me?
Can I make a comment, please, about that? We had
Sure.
that same discussion in the past, and Chuck was in the meeting. And basically, I think our ordinance says, except for cooking, you can have fires. So Chuck literally said, as far as he's concerned, if someone has a baggie of marshmallows next to the fire pit, it's a cooking fire. So we maybe need to change it, but I don't think it's a really urgent issue. I don't think there is anyone who will go after illegal fire.
Do you feel that I should tell the residents that they can have a fire pit like that they sell at the box stores? As long as they have something there that they're cooking with, marshmallows, because it says here wood, and there's nothing else that would burn in a fire pit but wood.
But it says cooking fire somewhere, so I don't know.
So
I guess we have to change it eventually.
Mr. Corbel, you have anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, if you're asking me, I told Dawn, if you read it strictly, you can't. But I know Chuck told Dawn the same thing. I think he used the example of a package of hot dogs when he talked to Dawn earlier. So, you know, you all have to make a decision if you want to change that or not. This is more restrictive than the county rules on open burning, or direct Mr. Branzell, because of COVID, not to enforce that section of the ordinance and let folks know in the community that, you know, even though you may be doing it for heat source, that's really we're only going to suspend enforcement during the pandemic. So you're not we're not encouraging to gather indoors versus outdoors when the weather changes. So I think that's all Dawn's looking for, is a little bit of guidance on that. I'm not necessarily suggesting we amend the ordinance immediately, but you can take the interim step of directing him not to enforce it.
Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this has come up in the past as well. I thought it was like it had to be like contained like in I think they call them like chimneys or whatever. Like I have to have like a top to them so that the embers aren't going everywhere. I think I mean, I thought that was always legal. It wasn't allowed to be like you can't dig a hole in the backyard, put rocks around it, and build a bonfire.
Yeah, it's the open burning. So a chimney is a little different, but most people don't have those. Most people have, you know, the open pits, if you will, or the open containers. So it's, and quite frankly, our ordinance is not clear. It just describes the open burning. It does not necessarily make a distinction. And that's why in the past, Chuck has used the exception in the ordinance as to a cooking facility, and that's the marshmallow and hot dog example. So it's, I think it's pretty simple. Either y'all want to give Dawn the heads up to give folks a break, or, you know, we want to change the ordinance, or you want to tell Dawn to tell people to put their fire pits away. You know, those are the three options. I'm not the policymaker, I'm just the lawyer, but, you know, given the times, you might want to think about making an exception at this point.
Well, I think we all should think about it, make a decision together, because I don't think that's really that much for one committee.
Marcus has his hand up.
I think we should say, like what Steve said, while COVID is going on, we temporarily will waive our enforcement, but should put on our to-do list to fix it, because we shouldn't have a tougher ordinance in the county, in my mind. So we should fix it long-term, but short-term, we should not say we're not enforcing it.
Just Tommy?
I was just going to say, in general, we should look into just making that in line with the county ordinance. Then we don't got to, you know, worry about it. That's the most common one everybody talks about, everybody sees, where everybody's on the same page. And then, you know, as long as they're not causing a nuisance, neighbors aren't complaining, things like that. I don't have a problem with anything of that sort. My neighbors probably wouldn't like me very much if I said I did.
Well, that's how Dawn got it. He got a complaint from a neighbor who said that the smoke was going in their home or bothering them. So that's how it came up.
Yeah, I know there's been a couple specific ones. Even the fire department's been called for, you know, a couple probably a little more out of control than your average one. And if that is the situation, then we'll have to deal with those.
Yeah, Patty,
on that
something?
basis.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern is whether we're getting so many of these happening that it's having a measurable effect on the ambient air quality. And, given that we're in a pandemic that is exacerbated by air quality issues, it might be useful to keep an eye on it. But generally, you have them sporadically and they're not usually all in one place all at one time. A sporadic outdoor fire. The two things you worry about are the air quality impact and the fire, keeping fire safety, for having them. They should have a combustion suppressor nearby and, or a bucket of water or something. I don't know that there's anything we need to do about this right now. I think to just keep an eye on it. If people are burning trash in their outdoor fire pits and it's making, toxic fumes and such, that's a different story. But, just regular wood burning fire pits at this point, I think it'd be better to let people have some gathering capability.
I would suggest we just suspend it for the time being. The problem that people have with fires is not the fire itself. It's generally the smoke that is attributed to it. And it upsets people that they have to, and not only that, a lot of people never put the fires out. They smoke all night, and that's what, generally speaking, upsets people. So for now, I would just suspend it. If there's a complaint, we could address it on an individual basis. I think that's the easiest way to go.
If that's the way council's going, which it sounds like, I would suggest, Mr. Morris, that we put a motion on the next agenda for the meeting indicating that we're suspending the enforcement of 7-201, but only as it relates to the burning of wood, right? We don't want to suspend it for garbage burning, etc. And we can just have, some sort of terminology, during the pendency of the pandemic or something like that, that gives us flexibility in case we're dealing with this next fall too in some fashion and we don't want to worry about it. We don't want to have to take this up again if we don't have to.
And I assume the motion should also include as long as it's in line with the county ordinance or?
Yeah, the other sections of our ordinance and other county regulations as well. Yep. If you draft it, I can take a look at it and tweak it if necessary.
Sounds good to me.
Good discussion, everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
That's all. Does anybody have anything else for me?
No, Don. Thank you, Don.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
take care.
Next, are there any other planning and zoning items that anyone would like to talk about? That's next on the list. If not, then any questions about anything, or we're done?
Okay, so I'm assuming we're done. Give me a few seconds and we'll go to finance. And Dawn, if you want to exit, you're able to. Okay. Okay, I'm good to start finance, Mr. Marco, if you're okay with that.
Thank you so much for your detailed budget analysis and all of the documents that we have to work with right now. I'm, amazed that we were able to pull a balanced budget without a tax increase out of this mess.
Yeah, well, let me go over it though, because
Yeah, if you
there's a
could.
lot of stuff here that's.
Yeah.
I do have some highlights.
Yeah.
Let me just mention two things first. I didn't got the time to do the cash flow for the month, mainly because I decided to wait as long as possible to do it. And then today became insane trying to get my memo ready and my budget finished and all that. And I can explain to you some other time as to what hassles I had with doing the budget this year. It was different than past years. And part of it was because of some issues related to pandemic, but nothing that needs to really be discussed right now. But what I'm going to talk about is a 2021 budget preparation. I'm going to give you a short slide presentation summary of my long memo. But again, what I've given you is the first draft. I gave you every budget except the corrective action because I have to sit down with the engineer yet on that, although I don't expect that to be anything unusual. The memo again is long. I'm going to provide you very quick highlights in a slideshow that I'll show you on screen here in a minute. What I'm asking you to do though is review it, look for any errors or issues that you see that maybe I missed, especially after I go over some of this stuff. And I would suggest at least you specifically review the sections that fall within your committee, if not the whole thing. Again, I tried to itemize a lot of different things in there so that you could see why I did what I did or where it came from. And hopefully the idea is that you will be able to pass a preliminary budget on November the 18th for advertising, and then of course a final budget in December at the regular business meeting. But the only thing I ask is if you have any changes or suggestions or things like that, that you give me those by the end of the month, by the 30th, if you don't mind. And what I'm going to do is share my screen and show you a slideshow, I hope. You should be looking at the 2021 budget summary show, I think.
Yep.
That's what should be on the full screen. And if I can get to it, I will change it. The slides, there's only about 15 or 16 here. This just highlights the budget message. The budget message I said is long, but there are sections that I want to review with you. Here's a summary of each of the budgets. General fund, 6.4 million, corrective action to be determined, road 385, liquid fuels 388, fire protection services fee 231, and capital improvements plan which only is 2021 and still in flux and being decided at the in committee. That's 543,000. The general fund does represent a slight increase, and I know that might sound unusual because I've been saying the pandemic is going to influence us possibly negatively, and it still might, but I'll explain why I was able to increase it slightly in the next few slides, and show you some detail. First, surprisingly, healthcare costs remain about the same as 2020. In fact, they decrease slightly. Workers' comp, same thing. Usually that doesn't happen. Usually that's one of the things that causes us to have one of the biggest headaches in trying to balance the budget. The taxable assessed value did increase, but I'll talk a little bit more about that also. Public works salaries, luckily, if you want to call it that, there was an error when I did the 2020 calculation. The error mainly being that I was working off a paper copy then, and this year I was working off a spreadsheet on Excel, and I was able to see the error that I didn't see last year working from the paper copy. So that essentially means that public works salaries, even though they increased, actually are lower than what we budgeted for 2020. And then of course, the bond refinancing creates debt service savings in the first 2 years, although you're supposed to use that for capital items, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Note that we are going to do a fee resolution, and some fees may change. I haven't gotten any recommendations yet, other than the engineer did tell me about some of his fees that are changing. I need to check with Mr. Corbel and others from the staff here to see if there's any fees. But of course, we use that fee resolution to keep all the fees in one location. The other surprising thing I found was that I don't think you need to increase the trash fee. I think you can maintain it at 210 for regular and 160 for seniors. The reason being that if you recall last year when we did the trash, we had a number of delinquencies we were concerned about. And so we could have kept it at an odd number, like I think 207 or 204 or something weird like that. But we decided the safe thing was to bump it up to 210. So we probably bumped it up further than we needed to for 2020. So even though the trash fee is increasing from the standpoint of waste management's fee that they're charging us for the 5th option year, which you're going to review in a motion next week, I don't think you need to increase the trash fee. Now, again, subject to review, I want you folks to look at this as we go. Anybody have any questions so far? No? In the budget message, I did put a number of different notes there that you should review. I tried to summarize the effect of the pandemic, And that's more for people who might read it from the audience, taxpayers, et cetera, so they know that there definitely is a situation with the pandemic. I don't think, as I've said before, that we are in dire straits as far as the finances are concerned, though, but I am questioning how well 2021 will turn out. So you should review that, the other budgets. The library, I did not increase the contribution, although the library suggested an increase. You need to take a look at that and let me know. That's a policy you have to set, not me. And as far as 2021 taxes are concerned, I lowered how much I estimated for the three bigger tax revenues, the real estate, the earned income, and the local services tax. And you'll see that on an upcoming slide in detail, so you can talk about it a little bit more then. I want to mention that we did receive more state aid than budgeted for 2020. I have that on the agenda here a little bit later. And we did cover the difference with pension reserve funds. And there still are reserve funds available to us that should allow us to cover any difference in 2021 and 2022. After that, it's up in the air, but it should allow us to do that. And if you remember, we talked a little bit of detail at the Finance Committee in September on the MMOs. You should take a look at your notes from that. One other thing I did, because I think the pandemic is still going to affect us next year, as I was going through the budget, I tried to put extra funds in 4 reserve categories, so they could possibly be used for emergencies should we have them. The 4 you see on the screen: budget contingency, budget reserve, the transfer amount that goes to Capital One, and the capital reserve fund, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we go here. And I don't have a lot to talk about if you're worried that I'm going to keep showing slide for slide. There's only a few more slides here as part of this.
Steve,
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry to go backwards, but did you say that we had an increase in the assessed value of taxable property?
Yeah, I'm going to show you that in a minute.
Oh, okay, because I was interested to know whether that had been the case.
That's actually on this
Okay,
page here. And this is all from your memo, by the way. All this stuff is printed in that memo I gave you. I'm just trying to highlight key areas, okay? As of October 2nd, that number there, the 380 million, is our total reported taxable assessed value. You can see the difference a year ago when we did this, the first draft of the budget, and there's even a difference from the certified value that happened in January. The thing that concerns me is, if you read the paper this weekend, those people who still get a newspaper or still look at it, the Post-Gazette was reviewing how the county does assume that there's going to be a lot of appeals, a lot of commercial appeals in particular, that are going to occur in 2021. Now, we do not have a huge business district, so it may not be as large an effect, but it would still be an effect. So that's one reason why, when you look at the numbers here in a minute, I lowered how much I thought would come in for real estate tax. The earned income tax collection has been affected by the pandemic, as I've mentioned, for the last few months. But as I also told you, what's happening is there's a difference between how much we actually took in 2019 and how much we budgeted for 2020. I think we're going to still hit our budget number for 2020, even though it's less than how much we actually took in 2019. I know that may sound confusing, but I think that's one reason why, even though earned income tax is going down, I don't know what caused me to do it, but I budgeted less when I gave you the budget last year. We had something like 1.16 million, I think, that actually came in 2019. I only budgeted 997,000. And I think we're going to get that number, pretty close to that number. But when I did the 2021 budget, I was also very conservative there. And you can see here some of the main budget numbers. The far left column, I'm sorry, of the spreadsheet numbers, not the revenue title and the account numbers, but the middle column that says 2020 budgets, how much we budgeted this year. And the 2021 budget is almost to the far right. And you can see I budgeted 2.912 million for 2020, but I'm only budgeting 2.9, a little over 2.9 for 2021. I also lowered real estate prior years and real estate lien costs. Those are always wild cards. And if you read the detail in my memo, it explains why we usually keep them high. But I thought I had the money to use. I wanted to be even more conservative than usual. So I cut back on that. Now you can see, I don't know if I can, you can see my mouse over here at this column, hopefully. There should be another way of doing this, but I don't remember how to do it. There's supposed to be a way I can do a some kind of a pointer on here, but I don't remember how to do that. I budgeted less for the prior year's taxes. Earned income taxes, I said, I only budgeted 997,000 for 2020. I'm budgeting even less for 2021, 975,000. I also lowered the local services tax. I lowered the cable TV franchise tax. And I lowered a few other minor items that I'm not showing you right now on the screen, but you can take a look at it if you want to see detail. I included the last section, sanitation, to show you how much I think the refuse charge will go up with Waste Management's 5th option year. I think it's going to go from 608,000 that we owe them, or I'm sorry, that's not what we owe them. This is revenue. I think we're going to get in 622,000 in revenue, whereas I budgeted 608 in revenue for 2020. I still think that $210 is going to be enough to get that number for next year. I'm not 100% sure, and I want to talk to you more about that before we do a final budget. I'd like you to look at things when you get a chance, especially look at that, the trash fee, and then in November at the committee meeting, talk a little bit more about it there. Okay. Any other questions so far? I just have a few more slides. Let me look at some expenditure numbers then to show you that. Salaries are based on the current contract agreements, and as usual, I show part-time and non-union separately. Now there's the full page of that is in your budget memo, but I also put it here. These are the numbers I budgeted for non-union and part-time labor. You'll notice with lifeguards, for example, and on the next page, the part-time public works, I didn't change those numbers really too much from 2020, since we didn't use any part-timers for public works, and since I'm sorry, not for lifeguards, for the coaches, we didn't use them this year, so I did not change those numbers for any of the coaches for swim, synchro, or tennis, since we didn't employ anyone. But again, these are all the non-union and part-time numbers, and you have this in your packet. So take a look at it. This is what we base the budget on, these numbers. If you don't like that, we can change that. I want you to look at that. That's in the middle under the expenditure section of your memo. So here's key general fund line items for expenditures. All of these went up some. The pension plans you know about. The refuse recycling cost is going to go up because we're adding the 5th option year. I raised trees for pruning and removal because we have a lot. As Dawn mentioned, there's often times when we don't get to all of them. So I raised the pruning $7,000 and the trees $10,000. And I was able to do this again because of the reasons I stated before, that I found adjustments in the budget or errors from previous years or what have you. Budget reserve, I raised that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I said in a minute. And then the capital improvements plan, I also increased that, and that's because there's a substantial amount of savings from the refinancing. And if you're saving money in debt, technically it should go toward capital items. Now, you can make that as a change if you want. And that's why I'm saying you can even use that number if you need to have emergency funds down the road and take something from there if you want. It's not a law that you absolutely have to do it, but it is highly recommended that you do spend savings on capital items. The debt service for the first year or two also decreased, and I just got the final debt service chart from Mike McKay. So I haven't included that in this yet, and I haven't handed it out to you, but I'll show you that. That's what I used to come up with that number in the budget under expenditures. Okay, any questions on these numbers? Just 3 more slides to go. This is the police car rotation numbers I got from Chuck as of today, or actually as of yesterday. So you can have I do this every year. So you have the mileage, what the vehicle's used for, what year it is, what make, etc. You have that information. That's in your budget pack also. Again, all of this stuff is in your budget pack somewhere.
I have a question.
Yep.
On the line, on the line 5, the K9 unit, are we making provision to have the K9 unit active in the coming year?
I know Chuck is working on that, but I don't want to speak for him.
Okay. All right. Because that's a considerable amount of money for that specialized service. And I know it's been suspended for the better part of this year.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much the value of it is right now. All I'm showing is mileage over the far
Yeah.
right. So I don't know what the current value is. I know Chuck has talked about eventually selling it, but again, I don't know what's happening. I mean, I'm not saying anything should happen with the dog, but it's not up to me to decide whether you guys are keeping the dog, what's happening because somebody is off on workers' comp or what have you. That's for you to decide. That's one of the things you should review as we look at the budget again to come up with a preliminary one at the November meeting. This is budget reserve. The reason why I raised it because of what you see here. The council policy is to have an average of 7% of the total general fund. That comes to $451,000 based on the 2021 draft. The current reserve, though, is only at 5.7, and that's not bad, but that doesn't meet your policy. So that's why I raised the amount to go toward reserve to $95,000. Again, this is one of those numbers that you could leave there, and next year, if you have an emergency or problem, decide not to put that much into budget reserve. That's one of those potentially emergency numbers that you can lower or withdraw, because you can always change numbers within the budget. You just can't change the bottom line. As you know, the state recommends between 5 and 10, and I think I told you last year, they started even recommending as much as a 15% reserve policy for emergency funds. But I think we're okay with where we are right now. You also had established a few years back a capital reserve fund, and you would set that target at 250,000. I added 40,000 to this budget to go toward that reserve. That would, right now we have 62,810 in reserve. And again, this would be numbers that if you wanted to hold back on because you have an emergency or some other issue, you could do that. I think hopefully those 4 emergencies have sufficient dollars that if we, for example, find that earned income tax is coming in even less than what I budgeted, or real estate is coming in even less than what I budgeted, you can withdraw some money from these reserves or other things and still be safe, still have a reserve, still be able to cover any emergency. You could also cut back on the trees budget that I just mentioned too, if you wanted to, because that is higher than we typically have used. That's my summary. I don't know if you have any questions for me on that. There's a lot more detail in the budget, of course, and I don't know if you want, I can go and put that on the screen and go over it further. But like I said to you last month, I pretty much kept the budget for 2021 as close as I could to 2020. And I even told the staff that. And even though I had them do a projection of 2022, you're going to see in my memo that I'm discarding that projection because the pandemic is going to influence 2022 one way or another. And we don't know how. We don't know how it's going to influence it. If 2021 ends up being a terrible year, there's no vaccine, or the vaccine is really late, there's more layoffs or whatever, it's going to impact 2022. So the number you see there, I may even eliminate that column when I print the final budget, the 2022 projection, because I don't think it's realistic. I like doing that in the past, giving you something to look forward to. but I don't know that that's even really realistic. Does anybody want to look at anything in greater depth or have any questions for me in greater depth on the budget?
Any of our council members have questions? Mr. Morse, I would like to know where we put the requests from the Environment Advisory Council and our various advisory boards. Where would I find that?
I'll show you.
Okay. I mean, you can tell me what page from your memo. I just haven't had a chance.
I will. I'll just have to turn to that first. Well, I thought I would show it to you. Oh, there it is. In the spreadsheet,
Okay.
it's on page 5 of 11. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can show it to you on the screen.
Well, that's okay. I'll find it. If it's on 5 of 11, I can find it.
Right there, you see a yellow highlight on the screen. Environmental Advisory Council. That's the number they requested.
Okay.
Does not include the larger item that's in capital. This is just the normal.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And I had a question regarding the utility costs for all buildings and facilities. We are going to be continuing our engagement with the Western Pennsylvania Cooperative, that we've been in before. They're going to be having an option to move our contract to 100% renewable energy. I don't know what the costs of that are. Do you know whether the estimates that you have in our budget for utility service include anything about that?
No.
Okay.
It's just based on the numbers we have now.
The standard contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any
And
other issues or questions?
I had another question. One of the mitigating measures that we've been looking at, and we've had some in the last couple of years, have been landslides. These are one of our vulnerabilities that, and I think I had Mr. Gilliland give us an estimate. About 40% of our land area is potentially subject to landslide subsidence of various sorts, especially under storm conditions. Can we address that in the corrective action budget?
If it's due to sewer, sanitary, or storm, yeah. If it's not,
Okay.
no.
Because I think I'd like to look at putting some kind of a contingency in there in case we have landslides like we've had in the last couple of years.
We need to talk to Bob Zisco and
Yeah.
Dave Gilliland about that. They're the ones who are working on that budget for me now.
Right, he gave us word about that, but I'd like to make sure that they explicitly discuss the probability that we have to deal with an emergency of that kind, because it's so much of our land area that's affected by that potential opportunity to have landslides from the nature of the terrain and the nature of the land underneath it.
Okay, so I'll make a note here
Please,
to ask them about landslides in the corrective action budget.
yes,
And a contingency there for that. I
Yeah.
know that in that budget, in the past, we have had a line item that's either miscellaneous or reserve or something like that.
Right.
I forget what we called it.
but if he could I know he did that map for us. Remember, I had him go through all of those things and we had quite a back and forth about it.
Right.
I made a note at that time to make sure we look at the budget plan to give us a little bit of a contingency in case we have to deal with that in the spring.
Okay.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions or need to take a look at anything else in the budget document that I gave you? I wasn't sure. Go ahead.
We're
ahead.
going to have to look at refuse collection options during next year, because that's the last year of our contract with Waste Management.
Yeah, the last year of the contract for that, the last year of the contract for Chalfont Police, for Chalfont
Right.
Public Works.
Right.
You have to decide what you want to do with all those next year, though. I mean, obviously.
So during the
this year.
coming planning cycle, we're going to have a number of things that we'll need to look at and on a going forward basis. And I know there are some collective approaches at shared services for some of these that are going on through Connect and other bodies, the COG. So we should monitor what opportunities might present themselves for savings in those areas as we're planning next year.
I would say with all three of those, the earlier the better to look at
Yeah.
all of them, regardless of whether or not you want to keep Chalfont, regardless of whether or not, how you're going to bid. I would not wait until August. I would start talking about it in the spring, get Mr. Corbel working on preparing whatever bidding you want to do, unless you are going to piggyback with somebody else or join with somebody else. I mean, he'd still have to be involved anyway to protect the borough's interests. But I would not wait. I will try to put a note here that reminds us
In the January,
spring.
in the planning process in January for our work plan. And I know during our centennial year and during the comprehensive plan discussion, I know this seems really weird to say this in COVID times, but we were talking about a cultural, some kind of a provision for cultural attention in the borough. I know there was a lot of interest in having like movie night or something like that during the summertime to do 3 or 4 of those in addition to the ones we usually were doing. I don't know if we have the latitude to do that right now, but I don't want it to fall off of the page just because this is an unusual year. I think it would be a mistake to plan that right now, but I don't want the opportunity to put some kind of a cultural center type of thing together. Maybe it should go under the Parks and Rec activity as a,
Rec board, you mean?
yeah.
I mean, those are the kind of things I brought up in the past.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to be critical here, but just to say, I brought up in the past about things like concerts in the park, movies in the park, hiring an intern, what have you. We never include those things in the budget, and it would be silly for me just to stick numbers in there without some direction and plan from you. I mean, you as a body, not you, Mr. Marco, but you guys need to decide if that's something you want to do. And that's the kind of thing you should not just be planning at this point in time of the year when you're doing the budget. That should be something that you start talking about in January for the following year, January 2021, for what you want to do in 2022, so that you can then, start thinking, well, how are we going to raise funds? Are we going to get sponsors for this? Is there an intern program we can piggyback on, either through Connect or Local Government Academy or somebody else, and be prepared, because every time these interns, for example, come up with Local Government Academy, I think they're still doing them. They want to know that you have a project already planned, and I don't have anything necessarily that's been planned, because I can't set that as a policy. That's up to you folks to set as a policy.
Well, I know one of the things we're going to have to deal with is I've had an intern helping us with the both with the climate action plan and with the data gathering involved. That's going to be an ongoing obligation on our part. And I can beg interns, for a while, but we've never paid them so far. I get them because they're working on master's degrees and are willing to do it as, gratis. But it's something I think we should put down for discussion next time around.
Yeah, I agree. I think there should be a general planning thing. I don't know where you want to include that. I would say look at the budget right now and think about that before we put anything down, and then that could be something we start looking at in
Would you
January,
put that under
February.
ops? Putting an internship under ops and policy budget?
Well, there is no ops and policy budget. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, where would it go? Would it go under administration, or would it go under a
An
particular?
intern, well, it depends on where you're going to use it. If you're going to use it in public works, you put it in public works. Use it in parks, you put it in parks and recreation. I mean, if you're going to use it in administration here with us, that would be under ops, but I would say probably under administration then. It just depends.
Yeah, because I'm not going to be digging through to get the data out on a daily basis. I'm going crazy just trying to do it the first time, and
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Well, things are, that's why I'm saying January, February, things tend to be quieter, not quiet, but quieter. You know, like having given you this first draft just made my day a lot easier tomorrow, because now that's one less thing I have to worry about. I've already given you the biggest thing I have to give you right now in this quarter. Not that it's done, it's not, but so, you know, the easiest, slowest times would be those 2 months in particular. And I would suggest bringing that up, let's say at the February committee for wherever you want to throw an intern. And again, begin that for the following year, not for 2021, because you're not going to be able to, unless you can get a grant, you're not going to be able to do anything.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else about budget? I allocated a full hour and we're only into 24 minutes. So geez, I hate to, you know me, I love being here and I love these committees. So I really hate to cut this short. Does anybody want to talk anything more about the budget? I do have one other item on finance if you don't.
Yeah, I do.
Come on. Yeah, what? Go ahead.
Hold on a minute. I have to find it. I can't read my own writing here.
That's okay. How about if I go into the second item and then we go back?
Yeah, why don't you do that now?
Okay. The second item I have on my agenda is not too long, but pension state aid received in the distress report. You'll note that I included a part of the letter that we got from the state aid people as far as how much they gave us for state aid for pension this year. We'd only budgeted around 120, and we ended up getting 147,000 in state aid, which is good because that saves us money in the pension reserve fund that we have. And you also should have seen a copy of this letter that went to you, the full letter, and you should have seen a copy of the distress report that went to you too. Now remember, we are at distress level 1, and that is something that council generally as a policy has wanted to maintain, because the theory has been if you look fully funded, you may not get as much state aid. I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems like other people agree with that. So we've always wanted to stay just slightly into distress. And that's what distress level 1 is. It's just slightly in distress. It's not enough to create a large problem. It's not enough to bring the state in to go crazy, telling us that they're going to control everything we're doing. It's just enough to possibly get us a little bit more state aid every year. So I wanted to point that out to you. I know I emailed these 2 letters to you in the last 2 weeks or so, but I wanted to point that out to you so that you were aware of it if you didn't see the email. That's all I have for finance, unless there's more budget questions.
Yeah, I wanted to, under, let's see, this is page 2 of 11, where you're talking about the fuel costs.
You mean
We have a-
expenditures?
Yeah, under expenditures.
Yeah.
We have a pretty significant fuel cost bill. Do we have a program? It says fuel costs other municipalities and organizations. What does that mean?
Yeah, I can explain that. Okay, this is a long-standing thing of people who use our fuel pumps. We have long encouraged other communities to use our fuel pumps, and we charge them an additional 25 cents a gallon to use them. And we bill them for that usually every month or every other month for that number. We have a number of different organizations, fire, police, EMS, et cetera, that use that. And we looked at that as some way of allowing us to keep our fuel pumps because it's convenient for our people, our fire, police, EMS, Woodland Hills, and public works departments to use our pumps. Otherwise, you would have to go through a lot of paperwork every year to get money back from the state. So we charge 25 cents, and it shows up in that line item on page 2 of 11. It also shows up as an expense under police on page, where is that? Oh, that's 211 on 411. Yes, 411. you see fuel there also. Now, what we do is we put in any emergency vehicle related stuff into police or administration first, and then later on under revenue, you'll see another line item there that shows how much we get in from these communities as they pay us back for the fuel they use plus the 25-cent fee. So in interest of being forthcoming, we show everything, how much it costs us for fuel, how much these other people are using, and how much we're getting in revenue.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is that in our climate action plan planning, one of the areas is transportation fuel reduction. And so I was wondering, you know, how we don't have any control over what we sell to other communities in terms of their use. We're going to be proposing some mileage efficiency standards in our own transportation activities to help improve our profile in that direction. So that's why I wanted to clarify where that all came from.
The only thing I would add about that, I don't want to go into it in great detail since we're live streaming it on YouTube, but there has been some concern from other people about us selling fuel to other communities. And I could explain that more some other time.
Okay.
But that's one reason why we don't necessarily make a big deal about it, but we do show it in our budget because we want to be forthcoming about it.
Okay, thank you. I think that's
Anything else related to finance or budget that you have a question to present to me? Because if not, I don't think there's anything else for finance unless you want to add something to finance.
No,
Okay,
I'll
I'm
go
assuming
through
there's no questions, so Ms. DeMarco, I don't know if there's anything to add to finance or not.
No, I don't have anything else to add. Does anyone else have an issue you wanted to bring up at this point?
No,
I'm good. I mean, we all have to review it in detail.
Okay, I would just final reminder, we'll look at this again in November. And if there's any changes, I will give you new copies, including there will be year-to-date changes. Any changes are given to me by you before the end of the month. Please take a look at the trash fee and see if you agree with me, as well as anything else that may be a problem. Because I really do want to make sure that you have a final budget to recommend as a preliminary budget at the Finance Committee in November, so you can vote on it in November, and we have plenty of time to advertise it so that we're not sitting through extra meetings. Otherwise, I need about 30 seconds to turn to Committee of the Whole, and I'm going to work on that right now. Give me 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. I am ready to go on Committee of the Whole. Mr. Tomasic, are we okay? Okay, I'm going to start.
Yes, proceed.
A couple of items. None of this is too long. 3 items, actually. I'm sorry. The first one is I wanted to point out this letter that we got from Mr. Moroziak on 289 Barclay. The reason why I'm doing this is because other people have looked at this and said, I should just make a decision. I'm not going to make a decision without council being aware of what he's asking. There is a large burrow tree in the right of way in the front yard of his property. Next to that burrow tree, and I may be able to bring that up. I think, no, well, heck, don't tell me I got rid of that. I did. I had his letter here with a picture and I got rid of it. I'm sorry. There was a burrow, there is a burrow tree with the wall, and I'm going to try and show it to you here. Okay, that's the picture I was going to show you. The wall is on the roadside. The tree is a burrow tree. It's in the right of way, and he'd like to keep the burrow tree, but he is noticing that the tree is starting to push on the wall. I don't know if you can see that. So his suggestion is that we send the Borough Public Works crew onto his property in the right of way, which is still grass area that looks like his lawn, which is one reason I want to bring this up, and have them remove the wall, landscape the area to protect the tree. I'm fine with that, but because it would look like the crew is working on private property, I'm not going to make that decision without bringing it up here. because I've had that happen before and I've gotten burned. So even though I was in the right and nothing unethical happened. So I just want to make sure if you're okay, I talked to Jim. He believes the crew can do that. Remove the wall and landscape that out as a slope to the street. And that would protect the borough tree. Does anybody have any objection to that? I'd like to know before I give Jimmy the okay
Do you
to
need a
plan on
motion?
doing that.
You need a motion to do this? I have
Now,
no problem.
according to everybody else,
I
Mr.
think I'm
Corvo,
so
Mr.
relieved
Tomasico,
that
I've
the
talked about this
property owner
before.
doesn't
I don't,
wanna cut down the tree, because that's usually the request that we get. I'm really delighted that they want to keep the tree. I did drive by there and look at it, and it's a gorgeous tree. It would be nice to keep that one. So I have no objection. I don't know if anyone else does.
does anybody else have any objections?
Steve,
Yeah,
okay, who put the wall up? You know?
Jimmy says we don't know. Nobody knows.
So the wall then is on in the borough right away.
Yeah,
All right. This person is requesting that we take the wall out. So he has no complaint about the wall being removed. So basically, we're going in there and we're preserving the tree, correct?
right. Mhm.
So it's in the borough right away. Nobody knows to whom the wall belongs. So we have the authority, in my opinion, to take it down and do whatever we need to do in that area.
Okay,
So
As
that
long as-
is why I suggested that you had that authority when we spoke about this earlier.
yeah, see, I hesitate to say something like that, but.
I understand. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you why I believe that is,
Okay,
and it is good to bring it to council,
right.
but I still believe that we can do that based upon the situation that exists with the
Well,
wall, its location, and the borough tree.
I'm not seeing any objection from any of you, so as long as there's no objection here, I'm gonna go ahead then and work toward getting that wall removed and sloping and whatever we need to do to landscape that area, so that it is returned to a normal state and protects the tree. Okay, the second item I have is the same one I had on ops and policy. I keep it on both committees because these are end of the year items. I just want to keep in front of you as a reminder. There's nothing new here from the ops and policy committee other than the fact that in September, you did agree that we should go ahead and accept the final option year. So I would have you vote on the 21st for the waste management, 5th option year for the contract. And you also approved the MMO. Other things going on in October, we do not need a tax anticipation note. I keep it on there because there are times when we do need it. There will be we will ask Walkenhoff for a letter for the police pension contribution to verify that. And you've already decided and agreed under ops that the citizen award should go to Mr. Lanigan. And you'll vote on that on October 21st. So again, these are just reminders of things that we have to do as the year winds down. Any questions on that? This is a repeat from last week's ops policy agenda. Any questions? The last item then, item C, Chuck Williams was asked during public safety to present to you the radio quote for piggybacking on the fire department's order for new radios, equipment order for new radios. And Chuck says that the cost for us, for the police, is $65,844.74, which, as you see, includes a warranty, programming, etc. So I would need you folks to tell me whether you want to vote to accept that under public safety next week, because actually, I think Chuck would like to move on this now. So what you would do if you're okay with doing this is ratify a decision you would make tonight. The $65,000, where would that come from? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. I honestly don't know. I would say budget reserve or capital. There's a lot of items in capital we did not spend money on because of the pandemic. We froze spending. So there is some money there, and we could just, for now, take it out of that. And then we'd have to play around with that next year for whatever item we did not buy this year from capital, the capital improvements plan. But I mean, you could find the money if that's what you want to do. I just don't know for sure where to say it. Chuck also did say that it would probably have a long life if you wanted to consider that as a bond issue item. That's again up to you. I don't know if you want to do that.
We can take it out of the reserve and then deal with how to pay the reserve back if we need to. So I suggest that we move ahead with that.
Does anybody else have an objection to moving ahead?
No, I agree.
I'll put it on there to ratify your decision tonight to let Chuck go ahead, and I'll tell Chuck tomorrow, go ahead.
I like the
I
idea
agree.
what I think you had with taking it out of the unused capital improvement 2020 funds if there's enough. I mean,
Okay.
maybe our first option rather than going into capital reserve.
Well, I'll put the motion as coming from reserve funds. That way it can be budget reserve or whatever you consider reserve. It doesn't, you can always change your mind on that as we go. If you don't want it budget reserve, it can be some other reserve. But since there is no objection, I'll put it on there as a motion to approve. Or to ratify, I'm sorry, to ratify. Because the decision is made, I'm going to tell Chuck, go ahead. I have nothing else.
Solicitors report, Mr. Corbel.
All right. First and foremost, at council's direction, I did draft an ordinance that restricts parking in the new municipal lot and the lot in front of the Westinghouse Lodge. Mr. Morris attached it to his email today for your perusal. Ultimately, at the next meeting, you could authorize me to advertise it, but we would still have time to discuss any changes at next month's committee meeting. So that's there for your perusal and review and comment. Secondly, Mr. Morris asked me about reviewing our boards and commissions and the alternate status of each of those. And I've reviewed that. Our planning commission, we are permitted to have 1 to 3 alternates, right? And I think we do have alternates. Same with the zoning hearing board. We are allowed to have alternates up to 3. The rec board, that's by our ordinance up to 9 members. There are no alternates permitted, but that could be changed. We could change it if we wanted to. Environmental Advisory Council, no alternates permitted, but we could change that if we would like. Shade Tree Commission, no alternates, and that can be changed. And the Civil Service Commission can have up to 3 alternates. These are in the if you can or can't have an alternate, this is based on our current borough code and from state law. So I'm not sure where we were driving with that because I wasn't involved in that committee conversation, but Tommy, I think you had a question. If you could clarify for me, I'm not sure where we're driving.
Yeah, I was going to briefly speed how this came up. We had an interest member of the rec board wanted to join. And I said, well, we're full, we can make you an alternate. So we voted to make him an alternate, but there's no alternate spot.
No alternate.
We come to find out.
Okay, so if you all want to direct me to permit alternates for the rec board, I can, if you want to put that on the agenda in a couple weeks, I can prepare an ordinance that would allow, we'll say, up to 3 alternates for the, that would be consistent with everything else for the rec board and go from there.
Sounds good. And if I could to everybody, I don't know if anyone else wants to do this. If you just, we want to make it across the board, 3 alternates for every committee. We've actually seems to have an interest in people wanting to serve on boards that wasn't happening even 4 years ago that I saw. So if people want to
I was just going to ask for the same thing. We should make it for all the boards Steve mentioned who don't have alternates. We should have, like, I guess up to 50%. Each board has slightly different members, maybe up to 50% or so alternates.
Well, I think 3 is pretty much standard. I would agree with that. We would have 3 alternates for all the boards and commissions.
Yeah, I'm fine too.
I'll just draft it to say up to 3, and then, then you're not obligated to fill it if there is an interest in the future or whatnot.
Yep.
But, so I'll do that for the rec board, the EAC, and the Shade Tree Commission. All right, that's good.
Thanks, Steve.
And then Mr. Morris had a item about the general walkway issues. I'm happy to, this was with the wood sidewalk and some of the repairs that were being made there. I don't know if there's a particular question or issue you'd like me to address, but I'm happy to do so now.
Can I?
Elsewhere, yeah.
Basically, the residents approached me, and there were two things. One was fixing some issues, which we did, or we were going to do. But in the past, we used to have some salt boxes. And I guess there was a little bucket in, so people could basically spread salt on their own when they walk up the walkway. And I wonder if there are any legal, first of all, I don't know why we took the salt boxes away, but I have the sneaky feelings maybe that's like some liability issues that we can't have put a pretty sign up on our salt box, please salt at your own risk or something like that.
What we've
I think,
done, Steve, just so you know, is we usually just close
them
always if we had to.
Yeah, that's what we've done, and that's my understanding as well, is that we've simply closed. So, you know, from a liability perspective, if you open the walks and you include the salt box, you know, who's going? A lot of times the salt boxes are placed there for the folks that use the street or the walkway to salt, right? Like in some communities, if there are areas where there's like water runoff, et cetera, they'll put them there so folks can throw it on the road or on the sidewalk, et cetera. So all that does, Marcus, is it takes away the blanket liability cutoff that we have with respect to don't use it, this is closed in the wintertime. So obviously if you open it, salt box or not, if folks are traversing it and they're falling and getting hurt, there's potential liability to the borough. There is a doctrine under the law, not to get into the weeds with everybody, called the Hills and Ridges Doctrine, which it's about when you slip and fall on snow or ice and whether you had a reasonable knowledge of the potential of slipping and falling, et cetera. So, you know, with modified signage and using that doctrine, you might be able to skate on a couple lawsuits, if you will.
We have some of those walkways which have no real big impact, but the one I'm talking about is a big shortcut for high school students to get to the high school. So we all know teenagers, once high school goes back to real school, they don't care about a sign, or they use it. You know, if they can cut half a mile out of their commute, they will use it no matter what. That was my concern for that particular stuff, because it's a very frequently big high school shortcut. So
I'm familiar with this walkway. I use it all the time. It's on my regular daily route. It is in pretty pitiful condition.
But we're fixing that, but that's different. But
is this the wood sidewalk?
Yeah, Woodside to wood. It cuts that whole loop out of Woodside.
Right.
High school students don't care if there's a pretty sign up.
Yeah.
But we care from a liability perspective. That would help us.
The steps are deteriorating badly. They're uneven in the asphalt, and they're separating in places. And it's a challenge to go up and down them in slippery weather. I don't walk on them even when it's wet, because it's, I'm not stable on my feet sometimes. But the kids don't care. They go up and down those steps like little goats all the time. So, yeah.
So it's up to you all, really.
I can just step in.
Sure, Jack.
If we put up a sign saying the route is closed, that protects us. That does not stop anyone from walking around the sign and going up and down there, the high school. And I think that's why the closure is critical in terms of protecting ourselves.
Yeah. That's an absolute way to cut off liability, right? It's ours. We said don't trespass, don't walk here, it's closed. If you did, then you assume the risk. And that's a pretty solid defense.
Okay.
So it's really all about risk tolerance. And if you want to roll the dice, I suppose, by opening it it sounds like you might need to repair it in some greater fashion if you want to actually open it. If it's already kind of iffy to use as a pedestrian.
The repair, Jimmy already agreed. It's like some easy fixes, some handrail sections are missing, and he can patch some unevenness. So the repair is already going to be taken care of.
All
It's
right, we
just
have
now-
it scheduled. I don't know when yet, but
Yes,
we.
But we wanted to wait for you to get that legal issue on that salt box race.
Yeah. So
Knows that high school students don't care about the sign.
Right.
yeah. So Steve, if I could chime in for a second, I just don't think that. I mean, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're opening up one walkway, and I mean, we can't go over there and shovel one walkway and not shovel the other 10 walkways in the borough, because that's a major cut through. We either have to close them all or open them all from a liability standpoint, right? In the wintertime.
No, I don't think
No,
that's true. I mean, you all have the discretion if, particularly if you're going to try it out for a winter and see how it works, you could do that. It's not an equal protection issue where each walkway has the same right as the other to be opened or closed. You may hear from folks that live in the borough that say,
that's where I was coming from. Not
yeah,
from
you could hear that.
Right. I was just trying to prevent you open up that walkway and you let them walk on theirs, and you're shoveling theirs and salting theirs, but you're not going to shovel ours and salt ours. So that's where I was kind of coming from, not from a standpoint of we can't open one if we don't want to open them all. More so if we're going to get a bunch of comments from other residents if we don't open up theirs and we close everyone else except for that one.
I think that's a reasonable assumption.
I am concerned that if we do open it, then you might get the request to start cleaning it. And we don't have the manpower to be doing that kind of stuff for an entire winter. So I let sleeping dogs lie. Just leave it as is, I would suggest.
That's all I was going to chime in, kind of the same thing. If, leave the sign, leave it closed. Hey, like we kind of said,
Yeah.
people still use it. That's all on them. Right.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Steve, before your report is done, I wanted to go back to one other thing, but let me know when you're finished.
Yeah, well, there's only one other thing. I wanted a quick executive session afterwards to talk about a zoning hearing board application to get council's direction on how you want my office to participate or not. So that's the end of my report. So Jack, I'm happy to answer your question or address your concern.
On the committee membership thing, we're going to have 3 alternates on everyone. Should we specify, so we don't get into the problem a year down the road, do they have voting authority if someone is just out for the one meeting and they step in? Are they allowed to vote as an alternate? Are they only allowed to vote once they replace someone?
No, so the way alternates work is if the board does not have all their members, the alternates can come and participate as if they were a full-fledged member.
Voting member.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the only thing, with respect to like civil service and zoning hearing, they like to keep the panel or the group consistent. So for example, if you couldn't attend the zoning hearing board meeting and the alternate took your place, but the hearing was held over multiple days, and even though you could go to the 3rd and 4th meeting, the alternate would sit through all of it and be part of the decision-making group.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
for some of these boards that are advisory, I don't necessarily think that matters as much.
No.
But with respect to alternates, a lot of communities will just include their alternates in all the communications. A lot of times the alternates will just go to all the meetings. And even though they may not have a vote, oftentimes they'll go and then they will be asked for their input as well. So they're sort of like a member for all meetings. They just don't have the right to vote unless somebody is missing.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So that's all I have other than the quick exec matter I wanted to address.
Okay, number 3, appointment to Churchill Area Environmental Council. Steve, the names aren't there. Carolyn Reuter was one. You know the other?
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Let me see if I didn't know. I didn't see names. Did you have names in there?
I thought they sent them along with the request.
I think I cut and pasted what you gave me. Wait a minute. You have Lori Williams.
and Carolyn Reuter.
That's the only one I see is Lori Williams. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's from Lori Williams. I didn't see any name in here, Bill. I'm looking at your email. I don't have a name in there. I just have
Okay,
you.
well,
Yes.
is there any objection to appointing the two people that were recommended? I believe Carolyn Reuter was one of them. I thought I had sent them along with the email. I mean, the email that I got had those recommendations.
This is a group out of Churchill that's been meeting for a while. They do a scholarship. They do some informational outreach papers. It's been run under a long period of time under Dr. Gottlieb, who was doing biology teaching when I was a graduate student. I mean, she's really been around forever and ever. They're involved a little bit in the recycling initiative and the plastics initiative. I don't have time
Is there anyone objecting to appointing the two people that I?
No, I don't object.
Okay.
No objection.
So Steve, I'll get those names to you, or we'll have to talk to, I believe one of them is Carolyn Reuter. I can't remember the other one off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
I'm looking to see on my email right now, Bill, but the one I have does not have a name in it.
Okay, I said what we'll do is find out who they are and appoint them, okay?
Yeah. Fine.
Okay, good. Okay, number 4, the Eco District Climate Action Plan. Patty, I guess that's you.
I don't think we're going to get to the eco district recommendation in detail this time, partly because the data crunching for it is quite time consuming and I haven't had time to do it and I don't have hands to put to that task. Our intern is working on the climate action plan compilation and we're going to be sending a draft to the Environmental Advisory Council. Their suggestions will be incorporated and sent to probably Ops and Policy Committee in December. And we will need to hold a public hearing on that. I don't know if you want to do it at the Ops and Policy hearing or if you want to do it at the business meeting in December. You're going to have the budget hearing in December, so it might be better to do this at a committee meeting. I doubt we're going to have a lot of input on it, but we will need to have at some point a hearing, and to do it on a day when we're having a committee meeting avoids having another public notice on it. So I just wanted you to be aware that there is not a budget request for this particular phase of the plan. And we do have the WalkWorks grant, which will be a planning portion, which will have budget recommendations for next year.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, the Donnell Walkway, purchase property. We discussed this briefly the other night. What we need to do, in my opinion, and from the discussion, is we need to get all the information that we can about the property, the owners, etc. It seems odd to me that there would be some kind of useful lot in that area and still not have a house on it. So for whatever reason, and I have no idea what the dimensions of the property are, etc. But I think the first step would be to get a hold of that information and the owner. And the easiest way to do this is get a right-of-way access, and we could possibly put a path down through there, as we did down there from down there off the Ardmore, Juniper Village over to, I can't remember the name of the alley, but it's one block off of the Ardmore there. So is there any opposition to us trying to gain this information and move in that direction, or any other suggestions?
No, I think that's a fine first step. We need to know what's available and what it is, and then we can talk about whether it's a good idea.
Isn't Dave Gilliland already looking into that? I thought, no.
I don't know. I'm bringing it up here. I remember that when we did this the last time, we had Mr. Corbel. We had a lot of legal things that we had to handle, if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of complicated coming from Juniper Village over there across from the property.
Yeah. Cost Realty already owns this. Dave Dillian sent this out a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it was complicated, but we're handling all these things. Just like that property on Braddock Road, the Coretta Trust property. It looks like that's going to close here in the next, but certainly in the next month or so, maybe Thanksgiving at the latest, in that time frame. So these things just take time. And
Okay. So if Dave is going for the getting the information, as soon as we get the owner, we should contact them and tell them of our interest in terms of getting a right of way through the property for the reasons mentioned.
I'll email Dave to remind him and have him get in touch with Steve.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, other items. I have one item that I wanted to bring up. We presently have an issue involving fill on properties, and I think that we should look at the language we have under the ordinance and under ops and policy and tighten it up a little bit. About 5 or 6 years ago, we had to locate a manhole that was 20 or 30 foot deep that people had just continued to pile fill on, and it cost us about $12,000. So I would like to get some type of language that tightens it down so that anybody that is using fill, for example, that they notify the borough and we get a plan and everybody's aware of everything that exists in terms of manholes and anything else that might be relative. So I'd just like to put that on ops and policy as an item moving forward, and just try to take the ordinance and tighten it down again.
Okay,
It seems like it's just a little bit too vague.
I'll move the topic to ops.
Thank you. Anything else? If that's the end, then we have concluded the committee of the whole. And that means we'll go to the exec session with Mr. Corbin.
Okay, now I need to shut everything off, so you got to give me about 30 seconds here because you don't want this recorded.